These are 10 mistakes beginner producers make. So the aim of this video is to get them across to you, and then hopefully you can avoid making the same mistakes yourself. So the first one is starting to sell beats too early. Starting out as a producer, it's such a great idea to focus your time at the start on just getting better at production. Getting to grips with your DAW, which I'll come on to in a minute, and continuing to stretch yourself and your skills as a producer so that you can get to a decent level and the beats you make are at a decent level so that you can then start selling them. By decent level, I mean beats that artists want to buy, because obviously the level of a beat is completely subjective. But when you're making beats for artists, there has to be a quality to the beats that artists want to buy. So until you get to that point, it's worth your time a lot more to just focus on getting better at production. And that's coming from someone who made that very mistake. The second is not learning your DAW. As I said, similar to the last one, but this is about actually getting to grips with the DAW itself as opposed to producing. Learning the shortcuts and commands is such a valuable investment of your time because it will make your workflow so much more efficient for the rest of time. It's also good to be aware of all the capabilities of the DAW you're working in so that you don't feel limited when you're working within it. Of course, there's no way you'll be able to find out every flipping trick and command and everything that's inside the DAW. And I personally love finding out new commands and new tricks in Logic, which is what I use. Still to this day, I love making those videos as well for other people. But at least getting your head around all the basic functions of your DAW is crucial. And how do you do that? Simple answer is YouTube. YouTube is the best place to learn how to use your DAW through all these tutorials on all the different DAWs. There's just tons of videos on literally everything you could think of. But you have to be intentional about learning your DAW. There is, of course, an element of kind of learning as you go while you produce. But if you can learn as much as you can at the very beginning, it would just set you up so well. The third one is buying too much gear. This is one which is, to be fair, probably down to personal preference, but the mistake would be thinking you need all this gear to start producing. I've said it countless times in my content, all you need is a laptop or a PC to run your DAW, and that's it. Of course, you can buy a MIDI keyboard and a mic and the rest of it, but some people get into music production and think the requirement is that you have all those things. To have speakers, studio headphones, a MIDI keyboard, a mic, an audio interface. It's not a requirement, and all that stuff can be bought later down the line. The fourth is getting stuck in a workflow. This one I had to break out of because it's kind of like a mistake which kind of keeps you trapped for a while. That's quite a dark way to explain it, but I don't mean it in a real deep sense. What I mean by getting stuck in a workflow is that you have such a routine to how you produce and what you produce that it makes everything you make have very little variation or enable you to advance and get better at producing. Meaning if you use the same sounds, use the same audio effects each time, have the identical process every time you make a beat, the same drums, it's going to limit you in what you make and stop you from experimenting or even just getting creative ideas. Workflow and efficiency is so good when it's paired with creativity, but when the efficiency takes over, it hampers that creativity and reduces it. So what's the solution to this? Not using the same drum kit each time, producing at a different tempo to the usual, using a different instrument, maybe deliberately using an instrument that you don't normally use or one you don't even like. Then you're using things to make it sound good. You're using effects and techniques that you wouldn't normally use or wouldn't have to use. That can spark new ideas and a new sound to your production. The fifth is not setting up your social media. I'm not saying here that you have to be a master of social media because I certainly am not. And it's certainly not required to be a successful producer, although I think it's a really good idea to start making content in today's day and age as a producer, but it's certainly not required. But I'm literally just talking about the basics here. Just make sure you're reachable firstly. You're easy to search up and find. Your profile picture is reasonable. Your bio gives information on who you are and what you do, what you produce. And make sure your links are all there and up to date so people can find the music that you produce. But the key with social media is just to be reachable. You don't want to make it hard for people to get in contact with you and get to you because then you could potentially lose opportunities just because they can't find you. The sixth is giving up too easily or having too lofty expectations. Again, this one is from experience. Be ambitious in your goals as a producer. That's really good. And I'd say maybe it's even required as a producer to have those goals so that it kind of gets you through those difficult periods. But don't set your expectations to reach those goals, or at least be close to those goals, in a very short amount of time. Don't compare yourself to well-established producers who are successful and making a really good living, because the chances are it's taken them years and years. If not years, probably a lot longer than what you expected yourself to reach that level, or the level you're aiming for. As tough as it is, you've got to view it as a small step each day on a very steady incline as opposed to a really steep slope which you've got to climb really quickly. Often when people don't get to where they want to be in the time that they've given themselves to do it, they end up giving up, either consciously or subconsciously. Consciously would be just saying to themselves or, to other people, I'm done with it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't manage to, break through. I couldn't do it, basically. But subconsciously is obviously more subtle than that. They start believing in themselves less, have less confidence, put less effort in, put less work in. Believe me, I know what it feels like to not reach your expectations. If I'm really honest with you, because as I've said before, I want to be honest with you guys. I feel like that creates a better relationship between us. I feel that about where I am right now. However, my mindset is not to just give up and say I couldn't do it or I didn't manage to do it, but to reevaluate where realistically I can be and want to be at the next point and work just as hard and have the patience and confidence to carry on. Number 8 is thinking everything has to be perfect. Every melody, every recording, every instrument, every layer. This is going back to actual production techniques again. What I mean by perfect is thinking everything's got to be precise and on the grid and pristine. But that's not the case. Of course you want to make something that sounds good, but that doesn't require every single melody, every note, every sound being perfectly played or recorded or used. What makes a perfect beat is bringing together stuff that sounds good, and that's it. So don't think everything's got to be in line and in sync and on the dot. Imperfections can actually add to the beat and make it sound more realistic and humanistic. Number 9, and I've realised I've miscounted because this is the last one. But anyway, number 9 is taking feedback personally and getting defensive. First of all, getting feedback in itself is a really crucial thing to do, so make sure you're doing that. But the mistake is that when you get feedback, you take it personally and get defensive, and then ignore that feedback. When people give you feedback, it's important to remember that it's not a critique on you, on your character, or even your production ability. It's about the next steps you need to take to improve your beats. It's not saying you're not good or you're not capable. It's seeing what you can do to make your tracks sound better. Number 9. This is the actual number 9. I've still miscounted. Last one was number 8. This is number 9. Putting too much pressure on yourself. This is a really easy one to do, especially if you're someone who's driven and sets high standards for themselves. It's easy to think that you could be doing more to succeed as a producer, even that you should be doing more, and then start to feel guilty. But in most cases, this is just not a helpful thought at all. As I said, it's a small step each day on a slow incline. So don't put pressure on yourself to make waves in the industry. Just focus on that small step each day. And sure, hold yourself to high standards, but remember that every big artist has and still does create crap tracks. Ed Sheeran says when talking about the 10,000 hour theory in relation to his music that it's like turning a tap on with the 10,000 hours and you're flushing all of that rubbish, that dirty water, that rubbish music out and then getting clean water. So now when the tap's running, most of the time it's clean water, but he still gets occasionally that dirty water coming through, that rubbish music, even when he's one of the biggest artists in the world. So if you have rubbish stuff that you create, just remember that so do the biggest artists in the world. Thank you so much for watching. At the time of recording, we're like 7 subscribers away from 1,000 subscribers, which is just so close. And it's just like such a big milestone. So please subscribe, that would mean so much. And feel free to join the producer Discord, first link in the description. That's a place where all this stuff is kind of talked about and discussed, and we kind of help each other out as producers. So join that. I'll see you in the next video.